Welcome to Core Concepts. This is a program where we ask our visiting spiritual leaders and religious leaders to come tell us what they believe, why they believe it, and what they're doing about it. In other words, how did they come to that belief and how is it manifesting in their lives? And we've had a broad cross-section of it. This program is sponsored by one community, the Institute of Applied Metaphysics, Church of Revelation. And we welcome you to hear today Sadhu Serves. Now, Sadhu travels extensively around the world teaching breathing, Kundalini Yoga. He received his name from Guru
Yogi Bhajan.
Yogi Bhajan. Yogi Bhajan. Yeah. And in India, about 3 hours from Amritsar.
Amritsar, yeah.
And he is independent of any particular religious group, I believe.
So far, yeah.
But his teaching has been extensive in, besides breathing and Kundalini Yoga, what else?
You know what, I'd say...
or do you just want to tell us, because you're here, you can tell us anything you want to.
Yeah, we'll get into it. I think it'll all tie in as nicely as I can put it.
We're happy to have you.
Thank you. Likewise, I'm happy to share, honestly. It's fascinating, and I'm very grateful that you present things that way. Why are you in it? You know, why did you start, and how does it manifest in your life? And so, hello, hi, good evening, good afternoon. So why did I get into yoga, or why did I get into spirituality? It's actually quite simple. You know, I was sharing this with people who came to the workshop on Friday and Saturday and Sunday. That a simple dialogue with myself at a certain time after having the gift of traveling quite a lot, extensively through Europe as a young man, and different parts of Asia and things, completely unrelated to spirituality. You know, but however, I was having a spiritual awakening. I didn't know it, and vicariously just through traveling and the beautiful gift of being out of my own routine and really getting a big picture of the world and what was happening with people. So when I returned to the States after an extended time away, I had time to reflect, and I had time to reflect on the gratitude that I experienced. You know, being at the Parthenon in Athens, Greece, or being on the Mediterranean Sea, heading out to the Greek islands, or, in Kyoto, Japan, or something like that, or Australia, and sitting in airplanes and traveling around the globe in the sky, sort of looking down at the earth and reflecting on, what do I do on that ball? What am I doing down there? So I had time to reflect. And when I got back to America, after traveling a lot, I was in a particular industry. I was in the fashion industry. And so for me as a young man, I was getting a charge out of it because it was fun to travel. And then that aspect of it sort of shifted for me, and I wasn't really traveling, so I was kind of camping out in Los Angeles. So because I wasn't really driven to travel, I had time to sit and reflect. And what I was reflecting on is, what do I do with all of this beautiful experience that I had? That was what was naturally coming to me, And at the same time, I had a very strong dialogue with myself. How can I be as healthy as I can be? Because there were some habits in my own life that I had that were unhealthy. I smoked a pack of cigarettes a day for 10 years. I drank alcohol. I had some other unhealthy habits or deconstructive habits, harmful habits to myself and others. And I just reflected very deeply and really honestly with myself. And I came to the conclusion in my own world, without a guru, without seeing any special spiritual people. I didn't read spiritual books or anything like that. I never came across a yogi. I didn't even know what yoga was. But my answer to myself was, you have to be as healthy as you can be. Because you just have to do it. And I said to myself, okay, I don't know what that means, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to be as healthy as I can be, and that's my #1 priority, and I made that commitment. And very shortly after that, I wanted to help people as well. So I decided what I would do is I would go out and I would become a massage therapist, because I saw that people were pretty stressed out, stressed out about, I got to make it, and I got to work so hard to get this and that, and I got to get the house, and I got to get secure, and I got to get protected, and I got to cut my way through this dog-eat-dog world. And since I traveled, I felt that I was really gifted because I didn't have to do that. I had time to sit at the Parthenon and just kind of go, Socrates hung out right here on this ground that I'm sitting on. And I was like, what made the Greeks do that? What made them so incredibly philosophic and scientific? And I was like, it's this place. Just the sea and the magnificent sky just inspired these people to be extraordinary. And I had that reflection, and I felt very, very gifted. You know, so when I was back in America, in my hometown, you know, in my home country, I reflected on that, and I said, well, how can I help people? And I'll help them relax. I would literally reach out and grab them and go, slow down a little bit. Just like, it's really, really, it's much better than you think. If you just take it easy a little bit, you know. That's right. Sit in the grass a little bit, look at the clouds, and actually just like, you know, turn off the phone and take a break, take a little bit longer on your lunch, you know, be a little naughty. And so I went to massage school. And that was kind of my first step in stepping out of myself to help others. And I took a yoga class intuitively. Somehow I felt that yoga would be good for me and help me make me a better massage therapist. Nobody told me. I didn't do any research. I don't even know how I knew what yoga was because it was never in my life. Actually, I saw it on That's Incredible in the 70s. That's the first time I saw yoga. It was a yogi. He put himself in a glass box on That's Incredible. I don't know if you remember that. But that was my first actual exposure to yoga. And you know, they kept going to other stories, and meanwhile the yogi was putting himself in a box. And they said, is he going to do it? And then they would go to another story, and they came back. And lo and behold, 30 minutes later, the yogi was in the box. He was wearing a turban, too, I remember. He might have been a Sikh, you know, who knows. But so anyhow, I went to my first yoga class, and from there, the rest is history, as we say, you know. And over the years of yoga being a very strong part of my life, it's only because being healthy is a strong part of my life. Being healthy is a priority of mine, and it's a priority of mine to help others be as healthy as they can. You know, it's a sincere prayer of mine. So I want to say that's my main practice, that's my religion, really, and that's my yoga. And so studying all this, and along the way, meeting great saints, you know, Yogi Bhajan is a great realized master, meeting Tibetan masters in Tibet, meeting, you know, saints from Rishikesh, and also people in the West, some very, you know, exalted sort of Westerners that are quantum physicists or, you know, neurologists and things like that, or fashion icons that are very spiritually connected and very socially active and proactive. And all of this sort of all melds together, and I realized basically along the way that really everyone wants to be happy. Everyone wants to be happy and healthy, you know. Even if you're not aware of it, you know, even if you are working yourself to death and you're exhausted and you're miserable, you still want to be happy. That's why you're making yourself miserable, because you're trying so hard. You know, you get tired when you just work so hard to get it all or hold it all or keep it all or not let anything go or not letting them in, you know, it's a lot of work. And so what I've learned along the way is that the word yoga and the word religion mean the exact same thing. They are the same thing. It's two different languages explaining the same dynamic, which is union. They literally mean the same exact thing. Yug in Sanskrit is union, and religare in Latin is to bind or connect. So, and you know, you can say, okay, well, what are you binding, what are you connecting? You're connecting to your potential to be happy. We're connecting to our potential to be healthy. And so religion is a way to do that. And great human beings along the way, Jesus Christ, the Buddha, or Muhammad, I believe they have the same desire we all have. I want to be happy, I want to be healthy. And you know, they went there and they made it a priority. And so, you know, Muhammad went in the cave. He said, I have to remove myself from the market. I can't be busy all the time. I've got to go and sit still for a little bit. Moses went up in the mountain. Jesus went out in the desert. Buddha sat under the tree. You know, because they were reflecting and really kind of going in there really deeply. I saw lots of people around them suffering and in strife. And I believe they have the same simple universal message. You know, everyone wants the same thing. And so yoga is that drive to be healthy and to be connected or be fulfilled, be without suffering. No one wants to suffer. Even if you are suffering, no one wants it. No one wakes up in the morning, not that I've known so far. And if you meet anyone that does this, I'd like to meet them actually and talk to them. Nobody I've ever known or heard of wakes up in the morning and says, oh please Lord, please let me suffer really terribly today. May my family suffer and may generations after me really have it really terrible. Please Lord. No one does that. Not that I've not ever heard of. Usually it's the other way around. Oh Lord, please deliver me. Take me from this suffering. My God, and I tell you, I will be truthful. I will, I will, I will. It's always praying to release from the suffering, you know? Even if you're not religious. When life grips you and knocks you down to your knees, you're like, oh Lord, please take me, save me from this. You know what I mean? Even the most heinous, you know, unreligious person will just go there and go, oh God, there's got to be something bigger to pull me out of this. And there is. It's our potential, you know, and we all have it. Whether we access it or not, or get to it, is another story. But we've all got it, you know, because it's just, we have an incredible opportunity. Our mind is so vast and incredible, and these great people along the way, Thomas Edison, or Jesus Christ, or the Buddha, or Mother Teresa, or Martin Luther King, or Gandhi, they're reflections of our greatness. You know, and they reflect that back to us. That's why they're so attractive to us, because they're showing us something that we have. And we know intuitively, I want that. I don't want to be miserable. You know, even if I am, I really don't want it. So yoga and religion are really, I believe, honestly, very the same thing. It's the dynamic that's the same. You know, the different flavor, you know, the different expression of what that is and how to get it and what to do to have it and maintain it, obviously, culturally, time-wise, things are panning out. You got to approach things that are going to be practical for the people that you're addressing and their, you know, and their circumstances. But universally, I feel they're exactly the same. Yoga and religion is the same dynamic. So, and then in my further study, in my own self-practice and reflection along the way, and now we come to what I kind of wanted to talk about is the 8 limbs of yoga. And this was compiled by a gentleman named Patanjali about, I can't quite remember, and I'm not necessarily so keen on details sometimes. Some details yes, some no. So you can't really pin me down to exactly when the guy was born, but it was around the time of Christ, either 500 years before or 500 years after.
I started to say about 3,000 years ago.
Right, yeah, 2,000 roughly. And so Patanjali was a yogi in that time, because in India you had lots of people that were, you had masses of people for a long time because they've been on the earth for so long. They had time to reflect and kind of look back culturally and as individuals. What has come before? You know, we've seen cultures rise and fall, and kings rise and fall, and political systems rise and fall, and, you know, trying to figure things out, rise and fall. And through all of that, what has sustained? And what has sustained is that, you know, there are certain ways to be healthy and certain ways not to. That's pretty common. It's common sense. Chinese did it as well, just simply because they're around for so long. And so Patanjali at that time had a lot of history to draw upon, you know, because people had gone through and they were contemplating the nature of reality and what is God? Is there some supreme being out there? And how do I fit into the world? And, you know, am I just by myself, or am I somehow connected to all this stuff going on? So these were things that people in India were contemplating and really exercising extensively, and they still do, and that's why the culture is so rich. It's not like they have all the answers, but they've gone through and they've asked the questions for a long time. And so Patanjali at that time, during those days, Patanjali was a yogi, and the 8 limbs of yoga really are, they're from something called the Yoga Sutras. And so the Yoga Sutras really is an exposition. It's a commentary on what yoga is, not theoretically, not philosophically, but what it is experientially. And a lot of people don't understand that. You know, when you read those Yoga Sutras, it's not like philosophy. It is the result of someone's extensive self-reflection, you know, and the structure of it. It's not like, oh, this might happen or that might happen. It's explaining the nuts and bolts of self-awareness, you know, and there's basically like 54 bullet points called aphorisms. And then there's commentary on those bullet points. And so from that, you can extract what is called the 8 limbs of yoga. And so, you know, 8 limbs is like a lot of the metaphors like a tree, the branches. You know, you have 8 branches, but you have 1 tree. I like to look at it also as a pie. You know, so basically it's a holistic pie with 8 slices. So you can't remove 1 slice and identify that freedom from suffering as 1 slice, because all 8 go together. They overlap, and it's not even necessarily linear. We can explain it in a linear fashion because that's the way time and space unfolds. You know, but really we're so multidimensional that these things overlap. You might, you know, have one piece of pie that really speaks to you, but the other 7 are going to overlap and they're going to factor in. Each one of those individual slices will have an aspect of the other in them anyway, because again, it's a piece of a holistic pie. So when we say, okay, well basically, if we really keep in mind what's the point? The point is nobody wants to suffer. The point is people want to be free from the suffering. That's the point. That's the drive of doing anything. That's why a serial killer does what they do. That's why a fireman does what they do. That's why a politician does what they do. That's why you do what you do, because you're acting on that fulfillment. And the fulfillment is basically non-suffering, you know. And we learn from the suffering, and we can glean the wisdom from it, but, you know, it's a growing pain, and it's not something that we necessarily pray for again. It's not something that we really throw ourselves headlong into. So again, it's the drive is to have a smooth life and even go through difficulty in a smooth, graceful way. It's easier said than done, but it's a reality. And we have a great example of Christ and Dr. King and these individuals that exemplify that. And we go, wow, and all of that chaos and all of that horror, you have Dr. King still smiling. Still smiling, and people are being beaten. You know what I mean? Gandhi, the same thing. It was horrible what these people went through. Jesus Christ was nailed to the cross, you know, in front of thousands of people, and said, "Forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do." He had transcended that, you know, that small mind, and that, you know, it's possible, and that's what they're reminding us. It is possible to actually be on this planet, to live through lots of difficulty, and still be graceful and have your wits and your health. So the 8 limbs, you would think, approaching it, you would go, well, okay, so I want to release myself from suffering, so I'm going to look into these 8 limbs. Okay, what are they about? So you have the first one, basically, is yamas. The first limb is the yamas. And again, I don't technically want to go so much into the Sanskrit because I don't want to fixate on this being an Indian thing. Okay, because that's not the point. The point is it is what it is. And if you strip these 8 limbs out of India, you can slap them on Judaism, you can slap them on Christianity, you can slap them on Buddhism, and every single culture is going to have an aspect of these things because they're general, universal themes, you know. So yamas are basically things you don't do. And it's about interrelating with others. You would think, like, what do I get out of it? Is the first place to look. What do I get out of it? How do I release myself from the suffering and attain this fulfillment? You might suspect that it would be about, okay, you do this and this is what you do for yourself, but it's about how do I treat others, you know? And lying to people is discord, you know? Being harmful is discordant, you know? Okay, if you got to protect yourself, that's one thing, but initiating violence and harm, it's very discordant. Usually mommies don't like it, you know, women are very intuitive. They don't like it when somebody rolls into the village and starts chopping people's heads off and things like that. It's rude, you know, and it doesn't feel good, you know, and so there's a general moral sense that, like, that doesn't feel right. Okay, if it's food, it's one thing, that's another story, but, you know, when we're talking about harming someone intentionally, it's not gonna perpetuate peace. And lying is the same thing. It's discord and it doesn't feel right. Deep in our bones we know there's something not right about it. It's not because God's going to punish us, it's because it doesn't feel right. And everyone universally recognizes that. You know, so you have other things, and these are restraints, things that if you want to free yourself from the suffering, that's all. No one's going to be like the karma police, you know what I mean, and throw you in jail because you're not being truthful. These things we feel for ourselves. We know when we're doing it, and, you know, we know when we're not on. So you have, you know, not stealing from people, you know, not hoarding. These are simple things, you know, but they cause a discord, and they do disturb the fulfillment because, you know, you have to maintain that. You're going to build a big fence and a big castle and protect everybody and kind of go, oh, me, 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 me. It's a very miserable way to be. In the end, it's very lonely. You know, Hitler died in a basement. He blew his head off with a shotgun. You know what I mean? He was a world power leader, and his drive to be so selfish was so lonely. It was anti-union, anti-interconnectedness. And that is one of the epitomes of selfishness. And it's a very lonely thing. And we only have to look at one example. We don't have to harp on it. It's a very clear message of what selfishness will lead to. So in that sense, you have the yamas. And then you have the niyamas, which is the second limb of the pie, which is 5 observances, things that you do. Right? Do. So, so you have the Sanskrit names, and again, these are just, again, they're universal themes. So things that you observe, they're things that you restrain, like you restrain your habit maybe to be untruthful, be a little naughty, and be a little bit selfish or whatever. And also, you know, you want to observe things like that are in your inner world, or your house, or your own body. You know, so there's purity, contentment, and austerity, and self-study, and devotion to a higher power. These are things that you recognize or that you observe to perhaps contemplate or work on the fulfillment. You know what I mean? It's not like it's a promise down the yellow brick road that you're going to get these things. It's a suggestion. It's suggestions from people that have gone into themselves and looked at the human condition from the inside out. You know, so purity is, you know, if your house is clean, it's a safe bet that your mind's going to be pretty clean. You know what I mean? If your car is dirty and who wants to get in there? You say, oh, Grandma, I'm going to take you to the store, and if you've got like rotten bananas in the seat, Grandma's not going to be pretty comfy with that. You know what I mean? It's disrespectful, and she's not going to feel comfortable. Maybe she won't say anything, but you know what I mean. So when the car is nice and clean, you can have company. You know, when your house is nice and clean, you can have company. When your mind is clean, people want to be around you. You know, when you're, you know what I mean. When you're bully, you're antisocial. It's like people will put up with you, but you know, deep down inside they go, God, what's this person? I just wish they would kind of just snap out of it. You know, but those are the things that we observe. You know, and we can also observe like contentment. You know, and gratitude. Like be genuinely like, it's enough that I'm able to have my limbs with me. I've got my 10 fingers, I've got my sight, I can hear, you know, I can breathe, you know, these things, and those are great gifts. And when we can really tune into that, we can recognize how gifted we are. We don't have to have lots of stuff. Just be really aware of the gift of what we do have. And that is these are observances. We observe these things. It's not like maybe they won't come naturally. It didn't come naturally to me. I had to really suffer a lot actually to go through this stuff, you know, and this is on reflection. I got sick and tired of being miserable myself. And then I had to go in, and a lot of these things started to happen on their own. And then through studying I realized, wow, and I looked at history and I was like, wow, lots of people actually have gone through these things, and this Patanjali character did as well. You know, so now this last observance, you know, you have self-study or study of ancient texts or study of other people's ways of going about things. That's a very enriching thing because it helps us expand ourselves. If we understand what the Buddha is going through, if we understand the parables of what Christ lived through, if we understand what Dr. King went through, you know what I mean? It gives us reflection on us and the human condition. It takes us out of our own, you know, little box, and we can have perspective and see the similarities, even in the differences, you understand, because all cultures do have their own inflections and their, you know, their observances and things, but there's a common thread. And then the last one is observance that, you know, observance of a higher power. Now, I don't necessarily ascribe to Supreme Being, although I'm a very devout sort of believer in divinity and all of this, and I want to leave it up to potential, you know, and I'm not saying there isn't a God or there isn't a Supreme Being, but I just want to say that when we can observe that there's something great going on, you know, whatever you want to call it, you know, I mean, that's incredible. When we can just recognize that whatever is powering the law of gravity, that's incredible, you know. And if I observe that, then life has a magic to it. You know, it's, you know what I mean? We are on a ball, circling a big ball of fire in space, people. You know, and it all sort of works out. Even though there's got funny stuff going on, that's crazy. You know, it's amazing, and it's happening all the time. There's lots of different things like that happening all the time. So I feel that that's a very practical thing, actually. It's not even necessarily about believing in God and in the theological sense of the word. It's a very simple experiential thing, you know. So now the other limbs, you know, you start going into, once we look at how we're interrelating with people and we kind of generally observe, like, how am I living, you know, what are some certain things that I can, you know, observe in myself, and we're self-reflecting and all that. And again, why are we self-reflecting? Because we really want to know if it's real, that we can actually be happy and enduringly happy, you know, even in the face of difficulty and challenge. You know, so you get to how am I working in my body? You know, and if we really observe it, our own breathing is a tremendous gift first and foremost, and then after that, how we're breathing affects everything. Everything. Everything, everything, everything. Every single person, how you're breathing is affecting everything. Even if you don't believe that it is. Because a very simple equation, you talk about enlightenment, what's the root word of that? Light. That's right. All right? And so oxygen is it's a very amazing thing. If you don't have it, you're not alive, my friends. You're just not. You know, and the more of it that you have, the better. You know, everything goes downhill with the lack of it. You know, you hold your breath for 10 minutes, or your breath is held from you for 10 minutes. Like you're underwater, you're in a car, dropping down to the bottom of the river, and, you know, your air's gone, and you're like, you know, you know, I don't know how long I've got. You know? It's like, So, and when it's gone, you're gone. You know, your essence or whatever is maintaining this physical form goes. You know, so that shows you the importance of it. So, consciously breathing leads to so much, because honestly, that's what led me into that dialogue of being healthy. Because something in me recognized I wanted to take a deep breath, and my body actually wouldn't allow it. You know, I'd been smoking for 10 years, and my body had constricted in ways because of body armoring, because of emotional things and all that. And literally my body formed and grew over a very shallow breathing pattern. But when I started to sort of travel and I started to grow beyond my own little box, I wanted to take that big breath and have that bigger perspective, but my body was still contracted. And something in me was like, that doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right. You know, I couldn't deny it. I couldn't just overlook it, because it was just, you know, I could not move from that until I understood it. And I'm still at that today. I'm still pursuing that deep breath. And that's really what drives me on the yoga. It's a very practical thing. You know, the deeper my breathing is, I believe the deeper my life is. And it's proven that to be the case over the years, for sure. So pranayama is one of the limbs. It's the third limb. So it's an observation. It's something that factors into fulfillment and liberation from suffering, according to Patanjali. According to me, I buy into it. You know, but everybody breathes, and whether you buy into it or not, how you're breathing is affecting your life. Longer, deeper breathing is a longer, deeper life. You know, cancer cannot live in an oxygen-rich environment. You know, so not even necessarily esoterically speaking, when we're doing this pranayama and that pranayama and counting mantras and things like that, that's all detail work. And if you're going to go there, great. But for practically speaking, everybody on the face of the earth is going to benefit from breathing better. Every single living being will. That's not a deniable topic. It's not a debatable topic. You know what I mean? It's just simple fact. So where it factors into our fulfillment is like, okay, better breathing is going to be better health. It's going to be more clarity of your mind. It just is, and it's a very nuts and bolts practical thing. It's not very even spiritual at all. So it just comes into, you know, there's lots of things you can do to start correlating it. You see how I'm breathing actually is related to my emotional patterns. How I'm breathing is related to how I'm, you know, maybe addicted to sugar. Or maybe I'm addicted to cigarettes, maybe I'm addicted to gossip or unhealthy sex or unhealthy relationships or power struggles, is related to my breathing. Once you start feeling into it, you know it. It's not a philosophy, it is what it is. And so as a self-aware being, that becomes self-evident. You know, especially when you're sincerely searching, these things will come naturally, and you have the guidance from something like this. The 8 Limbs of Yoga spells it out. And so asana, means posture. And so asana is the fourth limb of yoga, and it's the body postures. And actually the Patanjali's definition of it is the seat. It's the seat. So when this is my seat, and it's kind of, I'm contained in this seat. So therefore the seat is sort of like my vehicle, so he was really referring to the posture and the seat being basically like the vehicle of our consciousness, really, in that sort of context. And then it also factors into the body postures have also an effect on the emotions, so when we stretch ourselves in certain ways, or you put your body in a certain position, it helps blood flow, it helps the breath come in more deeply and goes into the blood, and then the blood moves through the joints and things like that. If we're all tight and constricted, your kidneys might shut down, your liver might shut down, your nervous system's going to become dull. You're going to, if you're constricted and you're stressed out up here, it constricts your blood vessels, so you're not getting oxygen in your brain. You get cranky, you get confused, you might get Alzheimer's disease. These are simple things. And it's overlooked in most civilizations, actually. We have lots of pharmaceutical drugs and lots of very complex things to heal people, and you know what? If you breathe and you just loosen up, baby, loosen up, because that's going to bring that life force in there. And so the asana really is serving the deeper breath. So the body postures are a very practical thing. When you twist in a certain way, even something as simple as this, sitting upright, working on your posture just like that. I'm a big advocate of this. Actually, one of my main specialties or passions actually is to have people sit up straight, stand up straight, lift their heart, relax their shoulders, and breathe consciously. In fact, I would ask you all to do it while we're sitting here listening and participating. So people that catch this on YouTube, this is beautiful, simple stuff that everybody can do. Your grandma can do it, a truck driver can do it, a fireman can do it, Obama can do it, you can do it. Everybody can do it. No matter what, you're smoking 20 packs of cigarettes a day, you can sit up straight, and if you do, it's going to make things better for you. Okay? And if you don't believe it, prove me wrong. And then contact me, and we'll talk about it. So we sit up straight, automatically you're starting to breathe deeper. Okay? And that's kind of awesome. That's body posture working for fulfillment, because we're alleviating the suffering. Sitting like this, right now I've diminished more than half of my breathing capacity. And my inner organs are squishing my lungs, and my lungs are shortened just by sitting like this. Therefore, I'm not getting as much light to my brain, or to my heart, or to my blood. Just like that, I've opened up my lung capacity. Without even paying attention to my breath, I've already enabled myself to breathe more. And that is asana and pranayama and self-observance and restraint at the same time. So all these limbs are very practical things, and they're part of our nature anyway. So the asana, as far as like body postures goes, a lot of people associate yoga with being able to do, stuff like this, or like pull your head around your leg around your head, or touch your toes. That's one limb. We're talking about asanas, body postures, what you do with your body, and a lot of people are really intimidated, because if it's marketed improperly, or let's say, improperly, because yoga is these 8 limbs. Yoga is just as much about interrelating with people in a conscious way as it is being able to be healthy in your body, being able to touch your toes. One is not more important than the other. We're talking about a holistic pie. There's a strong fixation in the West that's where they're uneducated, and it's not their fault necessarily to be uneducated, because sometimes mass media can tweak things and they leave things out. So if you see some young hot stud and some young hot girl, they're sweating and they're doing this stuff, and they're yummy yoga pants and all that stuff, and they're just like, oh, then the association is with the body. The association is with being skinny, or this weight or that weight, and oh, she's 20, I can't do that, So yoga then, it gets whittled down to being about this hot boy or hot girl, and then their body. And it's so not that. You know what I mean? It is so not that. That is like a sliver of that whole pie. You know what I mean? Not even a piece. It's a sliver of a piece. Because the piece is your body postures in a practical way. Okay? Your kidneys having an issue, you twist yourself like this, just like that. You're squeezing the kidneys. because your body is like that. Your organs are putting pressure on there. Your ribs go down, they squeeze the kidneys. Kidneys are like filtering liquid. That's their job. When you squeeze them, it's like squeezing out a sponge. You know, if you got this yucky stuff in your sponge from cleaning the table, and it just sits there, how can you expect to go and clean the other table with that funny stuff in there if you don't squeeze it out? Yeah. So it's a practical thing. It's very, very practical. That's how asana factors in, and that's the fourth limb. So it starts to become more subtle as you start to look at them, you know. In the sense that breathing is a very fundamental thing, moving our body is a very fundamental thing. We're talking about subtlety is the next limb, you know, is the fifth limb, is pratyahara. It's basically withdrawing the senses. And withdrawing the senses is kind of like when we feel like, oh my God, you know what? I was invited to a potluck tonight, but you know what? I need to pull back a little bit from being out in the world. From talking, interrelating, it's beautiful and all that stuff, but for me to recharge my batteries, I'm not saying me, but in general, you know what I mean? I need to shut the cell phone off, I need to take the YouTube off, and I need to like maybe turn off the TV, and the kids are, you know, they're off in their slumber party. I just need to take a bath and just sit and be quiet. It happens naturally for a lot of people. That's a natural sort of thing. So pratyahara is the withdrawing of the senses. The senses are like, oh, I'm looking at my Facebook and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, I'm on the phone, I'm doing this business and I'm talking to these people and I'm doing that and I'm talking and I'm engaging, I'm looking, I'm hearing, I'm smelling, I'm tasting, I'm touching, and out there, you know, I'm out here. And that sense of inside awareness sort of gets lost. If it's not in balance, and if it's so out of balance that we're always out there, most likely we're not paying attention to our breath or our posture. You might be sitting like this on the phone doing your business and you're slurping down your spaghetti and you've got your coffee over there and you're sitting like that, you're not breathing, and you do that every day for 8 hours for 30 years, and then all of a sudden your back goes out and you're lying in a hospital bed going, oh my God, I can't move. I can't do anything. People put a tube in me and I do not have control over my own life anymore. These strangers are telling me that they're going to fix me, and who God knows what they're doing. That's a reality for lots of people. It's a sad but true reality. Okay, so pratyahara is withdrawing from that outer world. You know, it doesn't have to be like a spiritual thing. I don't necessarily even really so much like to use the word spiritual because it's real, it's nuts and bolts practicality. I believe Jesus Christ was a very practical being that just was like, okay, we're here, how can we be here really greatly? How can we be here and actually have joy with one another? And how can we be here and be strong for each other when things hit the fan? You know? And so I believe that most of these approaches, most of the religions, and most of the esoteric paths actually are very, very simple and very practical. It's not otherworldly. It's not ooh, airy-fairy kind of stuff, you know. There's a time and a place for all that stuff, you know, but if we don't have the practical nailed down, you won't make any sense of all that esoteric stuff anyway. And what use is that esoteric stuff if you can't talk to a common person and have a common ground, really? You know, if you're just too way out there and over their head, what's the point? You know, that's my feeling anyway. So withdrawing of the senses is one of the limbs which leads to concentration. If you've got the phone on and you've got, you know, things going on, the TV on and the radio on and all this stuff, and people at you and you're Facebooking and you're talking and, you know, all this stuff is going on and you're just busy out there, your breath leaves you, you know, there's no concentration anymore, and that starts to deplete our nervous system, starts to deplete our natural resources for clarity, you know, and so if we can concentrate, then we have the ability to develop patience, or have patience, you know, when somebody's rude or they're having a bad day. We have, with concentration, we can see, this is not personal. Even if it's personal, it's not personal. This is temporary. This person's not feeling great. They may not be in the right state of mind. And, you know, I don't need to overreact to this, or I don't need to react to it at all. I can respond to it, but I don't need to react, especially with the same energy. You know, so concentration enables that for us, and that starts to lead to being able to actually be concentrated enough to be really present with our children, or our husbands, or our wives, or each other, you know, that we can actually be present, and when someone says, I'm going through something challenging, we can actually be there without having ourselves in the way, and really listen, not planning the next thing we're going to say, really be present with someone. What is it? What are you going through? Please tell me. You know, so maybe we can do something about it. You know, that's what concentration allows us the power to have. And that basically leads to meditation. And meditation is the seventh limb, okay? And meditation, really, the definition of it, meditate, it's Latin, another Latin word, means contemplation or reflection. So reflection, basically, if I hold a mirror, you know, up to the sun, it's a reflection of what is. It's not an interpretation, it's a reflection, you know? The sun is here, and then there's the reflection of it. So reflection, basically, when we're able to have our wits about us, know how we're interacting with people, we have not disturbed ourselves from holding the lives together, hoarding all this stuff and cutting ourselves off from each other. You know, we're having a clean space, there's a flow, we're not overwhelmed with all of our possessions or this or that, you know, we have enough health that we're not behind the 8 ball, you know, and that we have some semblance of clarity, you know. We can reflect, we have the clarity to reflect on our potential, which is already there. You don't have to stimulate it, you don't have to create potential, because potential is what it is. You know, if anything, we're just all of these things, all of it, all religions and all healthy paths and the 8 limbs of yoga and all of that, basically is just to enable us to really be what we are, which is unlimited potential. You know, you can call that godly, you can call it super spiritual, you know, whatever you want, but potential is potential. And having that potential and embodying it and knowing it and really embracing it and sharing it, that's being fulfilled. You know, it's less suffering. It's not, you know, suffering basically is not bad things, it's whining about bad things. That's what suffering is. It's resisting challenging things. You know what I mean? Challenging things happen. Childbirth is challenging. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just is what it is. You know? And when we're got that patience and that ability to sort of expand beyond ourselves, because we can concentrate, we can focus, we can reflect, you know. Another description of meditation is basically paying attention without distraction. Yeah, because if we're distracted, you can't concentrate. You know, if you're distracted, then you don't catch yourself when you're short with someone and diminishing. You know, just out of the law of the habit. Somebody may say something and cross your path, and if you're not concentrating and you can't concentrate and you're distracted, you may wipe them off. You know, you just, you know, oh, get away from me. You know, I don't want to deal with you. Who are you anyway? You know, I don't care about you. You know what I mean? If we're not paying attention, that can happen. And that's the observance of not diminishing other people by, you know, being derogatory or lying or, you know, being discordant, harming. You know, when we cause harm, even if it's like that, it's ignorant. And it does cause harm. And that's what not paying attention enables. So meditation is a very practical thing. It's not all this. You know, it is that. It is, and they're great beings like Muhammad and Jesus and Moses. They all really rock that really hard, obviously, and I do too, every single day. But at the same time, I have a practical application of meditation, of paying attention without distraction. It's being present with people, being present, you know, with what I'm doing, which is being able to focus without distraction. And having that enables us to actually see that we're all one. You are an extension of me. I am an extension of you. This earth, God's great creation, however it's running, however it's organized, and however it's being held together, that's me. That's an extension of me. You know, the animals, the earth itself, and that's the samadhi, is the 8th limb. Samadhi basically just means bliss. And when we feel that unification with all beings and all creation, what else can you have besides bliss? Because you don't have anything to lose, you know? It's like, I'm not going to lose everything because I contain everything. No one can take anything from me because I'm everything, you know? And it's not an arrogant I'm everything. It's a very humble and, you know, very, very profound. Everything is interconnected. And so that way we don't suffer. When everything is connected, there's a reason everything unfolds. When we've got that clarity, we've got our good health, the challenge will come, and we rise to that challenge by having our dignity intact, because we're human beings. We're not animals. We have an amazing capacity to grow and expand and learn from the animals, that we are above that, because we have this great gift of our mind that we can apply. And not even so much apply, but when we just take care of these simple things like these 8 limbs of yoga and these observances and that holistic sense of being, it comes naturally. The solutions come naturally, without effort, really.
Could you take a few questions?
Absolutely.
We have about 10, 12 minutes, so we give some time for questions.
Good. Good timing. Very good timing. I'm glad we got through that.
Do we have some questions? You know, when one is suffering, it seems in my life that it was the catalyst. When you're suffering for something, that's the catalyst that causes you to evolve and unfold. If you didn't have any suffering, in everything, you're sailing along, everything is going great, you don't tend to withdraw, to look at yourself, to work with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to get rid of all that suffering, do you?
Again, I think this suffering is creative tension, or life is creative tension. It can be good or bad, and so you're absolutely, I agree with you that the suffering in that sense causes us to self-reflect, causes us to self-analyze and readjust and expand, you know. And actually, like, I believe that suffering is not necessarily the creative tension. Creative tension is given. You know, I mean, creative tension in the sense that, like, okay, we're alive and it's extremely baffling. There's nothing you can do about it. It's extremely, we just cannot understand it really. And to me, that's a sense of creative tension. Now, if I were suffering about it, I would say that that's a bad thing. And I'm overwhelmed, and life is just so mysterious to me that I'm depressed, and I'm just, you know, so, what do you call that? Self-destructive because of it. It's sort of nihilistic, you know, nothing matters. It's all just terrible. That's what I perceive suffering to be, you know. And challenge now is a given. And challenge does cause us to rise and change, you know. So I think that's perhaps a distinction, you know.
Buddha, I think the first law of Buddha was that everything changes. And secondly, that all of our problems come from resistance to that change. Is that what you're talking about there with your suffering? Is it resisting the change?
Yes, yes,
stress.
Yes. In an unproductive way, in an unconstructive way. You know? Because again, challenge is not necessarily difficult or unhealthy. It's how we respond to it that determines whether or not it's going to be unhealthy. Closing off and isolating ourselves is an unhealthy way to deal with challenge. It just is. I mean, it's real simple stuff. When you isolate yourself and you go in and you cut yourself off from resources and things like that, you know what I mean? You know, you can cut yourself off from your own breathing, and you start to become unhealthy. It's not a spiritual thing. It's a very simple, practical thing.
Do we have some questions from those who've been in classes with Sadhu for the last 2 days? I mean, otherwise we have to consider that you're fully enlightened from it and have no questions.
It's all about a journey. It's all about a journey. And the more input we have, each time we hear something, we'll pick up more things, or at least that's been my journey.
What is the most important, the destination or the journey?
The journey.
The journey, all right. Because that's where you're learning.
Right, always learning.
I think the fact that we don't necessarily have questions doesn't mean that we know it all. I think he just does a really good job of explaining things.
Good job, very good.
And you know, it kind of leaves it where I don't really have any questions. I'm just happy that I was able to hear this lecture today.
Yeah, even comments, you know, comments are open as well, you know, fair game, because we're all in it together, and that's the union, that's the ultimate union, really, the ultimate yoga. Is that just that simple recognition that we're all in it together. We're all one family, all of us, all living beings. You know?
Well, if you have a question, you go ahead and ask it. Otherwise, we will give these last 10 minutes for you to give a message to our, you have a question?
I'll have him provide his contact information.
Oh, that's right.
Too far along.
Let us go ahead and do that.
Okay, so I have a website, and it's www.sadhuserves.com, SADHUSERVES. I'm also Sadhu Serves on Facebook. I'm Sadhu Serves on Twitter. I'm Sadhu Serves at gmail.com. And Sadhu Serves at Google+.
And Instagram.
Yes. By the way, the website, I'm overhauling it now, and I'll have a new website shortly, so please stay in touch, and I'll be happy to stay in touch with anyone that reaches out to me. And I'll start a blog where I'll start going into certain things, and I'll have a weekly sort of focus.
And you have your schedule as to where you will be?
It will be on the website for sure. I have a YouTube channel as well that I'm building also, which I'm going to have to link it to Sadhu Serves. Maybe I'll create a new one. That was us.
You're going to have to link
for
it.
Sadhu Serves. It's linked?
Okay.
And you're going to be on the Renford Broadcast Network, so you want to be sure and link there too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where people can get to you from there.
Mhm.
Well, go ahead with any message that you'd like to give to those listeners.
Okay.
All right.
You know, this is really brilliant because I've been breathing for a long time. We all have. I've been breathing for a long time, ever since you were a baby. And so
Some of us have been breathing longer than others.
and so I want to say that my health and my happiness and my fulfillment and my passion and all of that has come from my breathing better. Okay, so I've watched YouTube and I've seen a couple videos, and I honestly don't feel anyone's nailing the drastic importance of breathing. I felt that, and I felt I have to do something. I have to create a video, film myself or something to make it very, very direct so that people get how amazing it is. So that's my message. I say it all the time, and it's a natural thing. It's not that I sit around and I go, gosh, I need to really promote breathing. It comes naturally. When I sit with people, I'm with people like yourselves in the situation, and I go, honestly, I've been around the world, I've had lots of blessings, okay, lots. I've met incredible people, famous people, all kinds of stuff. I've really had an incredible life. If I were to be plucked from this earth right now today, and the last things I could say to you, okay, honestly, about how I feel, honestly, that anybody, anywhere, anytime can benefit their life, increase their health, get more happy, be more clear, be more spiritually evolved or enlightened or, you know, whatever. Sit up, stand up as straight as you can. Lift your heart, relax your shoulders, and breathe as consciously as you can forever. Every day. Okay? And it's that simple. Anybody can do it. And it is the #1 thing that is determining your level of health and your clarity. #1. Philosophy aside, even if you are greatly philosophical and you've got great religious stuff going on, you've got great visits from spiritual beings from other realms, breathe as consciously as you can. Keep breathing. You know, keep sitting up straighter and lifting the heart more, relaxing the shoulders more. You're only going to become more powerful. Everyone, please, please, please do it. And let's do it for each other.
So it is very much holistic. You're not talking about just for physical thing. I mean, you're talking about mentally and spiritually as well. Everything is enhanced.
Absolutely.
By the breathing.
It can release you from fear. It can help you overcome any addictions. You know, it can make you feel better. It can make your sex life better. You know, make you enjoy your food better. Make your relationship with your children better. Your wife, your husband. Honestly, it'll enhance your career. You know, all of that. Anything you can make a list of that I want better in my life, sitting up straight, standing up straight, and breathing better is going to make every single one on that list better.
How do you manage this when you're strapped in, seat belt, shoulder belt, driving on long journeys?
You know, if I can't necessarily, if I can't, you know, sit straight up like a yogi in the car, you know, at least I'm doing my best to be as straight as I can and paying attention to the breath. You know what I mean? So paying attention to the breath is very powerful. You know what I mean? Even if you're not in the ideal where you've got, you know, you're like the yogi sitting on a little cushion, all that stuff. It's not necessarily about that. It's really practical on the toilet, in the car, watching the Super Bowl, at the office, on Facebook, you know, sitting, sipping mimosas, doing Dharma talks, you know, being in church, whatever it is. Honestly, anytime, anywhere.
Why is it when we are frightened or something very bad happens, or we're, you know, like a friend dies or something, you know, immediately it seems like we stop breathing. What's the phenomena there?
I believe it's thinking. Because there's a difference between thinking and being, okay? Thinking is like if I were to project a movie on this screen, okay, that's whatever it could be. It could be a great happy love story, or it could be a horror film, or it could be a great suspenseful drama with lots of violence. It's on that screen, okay? It's not really happening in reality. It's on that screen. Thinking is like that. I can think of the future when somebody dies or something. I can think, oh my God, I used to love them so much, and now they're gone, and this is going to happen, and that's going to happen, and this and this. We detach ourselves from the present moment.
Forget to breathe.
That's right. And then the breathing's gone because we're no longer present. It's a very simple thing. It's a really simple thing.
That's what drove me to Kundalini. Of all the years I practiced yoga, and then the first time I did the Kundalini, there's so much emphasis on breath work, and I come from having had asthma and a lot of breathing issues, and it's just phenomenal and magical that when you don't breathe and never have and had illnesses, to have experienced the mental clarity, the mood lift, I mean all the things he has said. I'm like first front on how wonderful Kundalini and how magical it has been transforming my life.
So your meditation that you teach is centered around the breathing as opposed to a mantra or anything of that nature?
First of all, it's that, because if you're going to excel in mantra meditation, you're going to excel in very, high levels of meditation. The meditation masters teach, visualizations and things like that. Extremely esoteric and extremely sort of advanced meditation techniques. The foundation of it is, again, the vehicle for meditation will always be paying attention without distraction. There will always be a reference point, even in emptiness meditation that some practitioners do. What's extremely obscure when you say, okay, in reality, there's no smallest particle. In reality, that's the sense. Quantum physics knows that, science knows that, esoteric religions know that, spiritual people know that. There's no smallest particle. So really, there is no reference point, because there's no point anywhere. There's no one separate being. It's all just an empty sort of void, but it's full of life and energy. It's a paradox, But so basic meditation will have a reference point, whether it's a mantra, whether it's a visualization, whether it's welling up compassion for all beings. There is a focus of presence. It's not thinking. Thinking is in the realm of linear time, which will be in the past or in the future, not the present. Okay, so being present has a reference point. So the most fundamental thing that we have right under our nose is the breath coming in, the breath going out. It is an extremely powerful meditative reference point. So when we can focus on that breath coming in and coming out, then we're mastering meditation, because meditation is the ability to focus without distraction. Yeah, and then you can add on all kinds of layers and amazing meditation techniques on all of that. But if you don't have that down, you're missing out on a lot of stuff.
I want to thank you very much, Sadhu, for being with us.
Thank you.
And remember that Sadhu serves everywhere. Just look on there everywhere, and it's Sadhu serves. And we want to thank our guests for being with us. Some of them have been in classes with Sadhu over the last few days. And
we're also going to thank Sarah Stramel, because she organized this, really. And she's in Memphis, and she got you and I together and all these wonderful people together. So she is a very
organizer extraordinaire.
That's right. PR,
It's my pleasure.
PR extraordinaire.
I want to thank you for being with us today. I'm James Renford Powell, and this is Core Concepts.